lots of time helping people and organisations cope with change. And we also know when it comes to mergers and acquisitions, we did think tonight we need somebody who's an expert. The official bio, Bain Consulting, yes? Morgan Stanley, Deutsche Bank, head of the Cass Business School research unit. So we know Scott's a clever guy. So point one, he's bright. Point two, of course, Scott's operated in the real world, so he's got commercial acumen. Point three is academic, so he's got real academic rigour. But point four, ready for it? Is also quite humorous. So if you've had the pleasure of reading his book, How to Survive M&A, he tells the story that if you get bought by an American investment bank and you work in a UK investment bank, first of all, work in a product they know nothing about. And secondly, live in a country which is a long way away. So I think it was Swedish derivatives in potatoes living in Copenhagen. Scott Muller, over to you.
The Economist approached us about 2 years ago and said, we don't have in the Economist book series a book about M&A. And Scott, you're an author in M&A, and could you write one? And I said, yes, but I'm going to get a couple co-authors to help me on that. Most people who are doing M&A deals, they don't go in thinking they can't do the deal. Everybody goes in very, very hubristically thinking, I know how to do this deal. I know the industry. I probably know the other company very well. I know some of the other people. I've met them. I can do this deal. And then at some point it goes wrong, and at that point in time they don't have anything to go to, because the books always start off saying this is what you should have done at the beginning. So what we decided to do was to write a book on how deals fail or why deals fail, but then how to rescue them. Okay? And in the book, that's exactly what we do, is we go through the different phases of a deal, so that at some point in time when the deal actually has gone off the rails, you can say, no, it didn't go off the rails at the planning, or that was so long ago, but it's now gone off because I'm in the negotiation stage. What do we do at this point in time? And that's actually what we've tried to put together. The problem with M&A is that everybody thinks about 70% of all deals fail. And that was true a couple decades ago. And now it's an incredible 50% of all deals fail, okay? Which is still absolutely dismal. I mean, how many people involved in HR in the room here? Heads up here. So, okay, that's more than 50%. There was a study that was done about 10 years ago by a firm at that point in time known as Towers Perrin, who themselves have become Towers Watson and now Willis Towers Watson. But anyway, they did a study about 10 or 15 years ago, and they found that in 40% of all M&A deals, the head of HR found out about the deal at the time it was announced to the public. Okay? Actual fact, okay, from a survey that they had done there. That's one of the real big problems. And that gets to me on what we've actually focused on in this particular book. I am a professor of finance. Our book doesn't talk about finance. It's because finance, for most companies, for most boards, tends to be so important that, number one, it's going to get attention anyway. Okay? I presume you all agree with me. Number two is, I maintain that making the wrong financial decision in an M&A deal is probably the easiest thing to recover from. But there's three things that you cannot recover from. Okay? One of them is poor planning. The second one is poor communication. And the third one is poor people management. And our book takes those three aspects, which is why it's quite relevant to, a lot of the people here in this room, and knowing what Michael spends a lot of his time on, on the whole HR side. The really fun part of the book was spending a lot of time with people, interviewing them on what went right. Diageo is a perfect example of a company that got it right. Their big markets of North America and Europe were not going to be the growth markets in the future. And they said, therefore, emerging markets was where it was going to be. And in the book, we spend some time talking about why they ended up buying a drinks company in Turkey. And you might say, wait a second, Turkey, Also, what's happening there, is that not a place where alcohol may, in fact, not have a great future, but in fact, actually it does, and, looking at their purchase of what was basically the Rocky, the premium Rocky business in that, in that market was great. Meta Abo, which happened to be, one of the leading beers in Ethiopia and that part of Africa. And then also Yipioca, which is, what we all drink when we drink caipirinhas and so on, which is in Brazil. Communication can go wrong as well. Very often communication is not thought of until very late in the day. I don't have facts and figures like I did on the HR thing, about how that's gone wrong. Although we at Cass actually did a study that got published about 1.5 years ago, talking about the fact that if in fact you have no PR advisor, your deal is not going to be as likely to get to completion as if you do have a PR advisor, which, needless to say, the PR advisors loved that one. But it actually happened to be true in some very rigorous research that we do. But interestingly enough, people get communication wrong because they're trying to communicate the wrong thing to the right people or the right thing to the wrong people, throughout the whole deal as well. And we spent some time talking about that. But the people side, I think, is the one that that really, got us going on this book. And we do flow those three themes, through there. What is the average number of hours of work that you get from a professional employee, meaning somebody who's at a desk who has some control over what they do, as opposed to, say, a factory worker who has to push a button every, 93 seconds, and therefore they can't leave their station until the bell rings and then they have their coffee break. But if you look at office workers, how many hours of work do you think the average American company gets out of the average American worker in an 8-hour workday? I guess?
5.
Bingo, right there. 5. Okay? Turns out to be 5. Now, some of that's taken up with somebody having to walk downstairs, go through flights, and find the place to actually take a smoke. You obviously have things like, comfort breaks. That doesn't include the lunch break that's in there anyway. But actually, it turns out the reason you don't get 8 out of 8 is because people are waiting for something to arrive before they can actually act on it. Okay, and that study was 2003, so it isn't that they're actually reading Facebook instead, because it didn't exist back then. Okay, in the 2 weeks following the announcement of a merger, what does that 5 hours drop to?
2.
Between 1 and 2. So I heard somebody say 1 and 2. And it's interesting because serial acquirers, okay, I'm actually, it's fascinating. A lot of you aren't finding any of this odd, okay, and now, by the way, you don't have to read the book because I'm telling you everything's in the book anyway. But the companies that do this all the time, and there's some other research that we've done at Cass. This is real blatant advertising for the school, I know, but does show that serial acquirers are more successful, and I don't mean like Kellogg's and Nestle. I mean companies that do a lot of deals. Serial acquirers are more successful at doing deals, okay, than companies that only do deals occasionally on that. And so practice does make perfect. But those serial acquirers, the companies like GE, Intel, Cisco, Google, although Google wasn't in that particular study back in 2003, but the companies that do a lot of deals, they actually have SWAT teams that will come in and do the job of employees who are, in fact, doing essential services. Another one of the cases that we have in here, just to show you that we're being very ecumenical in terms of looking at lots of different things, is Glazer's acquisition of Manchester United. It's an absolutely incredible case. Okay, and we spent a lot of time, putting that case together. But that takeover took 2 years to take place. Okay, and everybody said it was just going to be a financial acquisition, and he was going to drop out. Glazer himself, as I think most people know, passed away a few years ago. But his family, still owns that company on that. The long-term planning of going through a takeover battle that would take 2 years as well, despite having yourself burned in effigy, despite having your advisors who would have protesters outside of the offices. We did challenge everybody at the end of our book to find what we called the M&A Yeti, a company that has gotten the planning, the communication, and the people wrong, yet has been able to turn it around. Because what we have in the book, remember the book is M&A, Why Deals Fail and How to Rescue Them, is we have ways in the book of how to rescue from having gotten a people decision wrong, or a planning decision wrong, or a communication decision wrong, or two of those. We were not able to find a case study of somebody who'd gotten all three wrong and then had turned out a good deal.
So, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Professor Scott Muller.